What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 10 of the Millennovator podcast, where you are about to learn exactly why you should not be the one evaluating your own business.
What would go on the next day? What would go on over the next month, 3 months, and where we would be after that point? I almost felt like a little kid, who had just learned how to swim, about to jump off the diving board.
Best of luck, kid.
Exactly. That's how I felt.
You're listening to the Millennovator podcast, where we host the most innovative millennial entrepreneurs, and you learn the secret tips, proven tricks, and profitable tools they have picked up from entrepreneurial infancy to straight up business empire, and every stage in between. And now, your hosts and money Millennovators, Jonathan and Will.
Give me the right now, go right now. I'm trying to sit it now, go right now. We trying to get it now.
Right now, as a listener to our show and a member of the Millennovator movement community, it's guaranteed 100% that you've validated your business.
I've never, what? Validated my business? Of course I've never validated. Jonathan, have you ever had a really great idea?
Oh, yeah.
No, you haven't.
On the daily.
Okay. Perfect example. On the daily, right? Have you ever had, you've come home and you've been like, Tamara, for those of you listening who don't know already, that's Jonathan's wife.
It's the wifey.
And you're like, Tamara, I have this brilliant idea.
She probably thinks I really do that every day.
And what does she say to your brilliant idea?
She probably rolls her eyes and says, okay, let's hear it, or something to that nature.
And you pitch it, and then she says,
well, after my pitch, she's like, all aboard, let's do this.
So humble this guy is. But that's the problem right there, is you validate it, right? And you're like, dude, this is going to work. I have this business plan. Then you start diving into the business plan of the idea.
Oh, yeah.
Then you start diving into the marketing of the idea,
I even
the
give her a
sales
little
of the
what
idea.
It is for her. What's in it for her?
Yeah, exactly. Give her a little push on the way, like, hey, you can get this in this month when I get these sales. It's all BS. You're talking long term when you haven't even had the market validate your idea. You haven't had mentors validate your idea. You haven't had a board of directors validate your idea. What's it worth, really?
If we're talking about whether to get Pizza Hut or Papa John's, I mean, in that case, I'm the market. But
That's a self-evaluation that I'm fine with taking all day long. But listen, today's guest, Will Bryant of Quanalytics here in Birmingham, Alabama, they didn't necessarily say, we're going to self-validate. Those guys reached out, man. They did their work on the market prior to saying, this is a good idea, let's do it.
One of the things that we really touch on in the interview with Will is just how you can't be scared to get feedback. And we're really excited about you hearing his story and how they did that and used it to capitalize on their business.
And in today's interview that we're about to get into, Will is going to share with you just a couple of ways that you can have other people validate your business and let you know, hey, this is a really good idea, but it would be a great idea if you... Or, hey man, I'm not sure this is the best point for you to take right now. What are your strengths that you plan on utilizing during this?
Or, here's a crazy one out there. What if they come back and say, hey, this business is a terrible idea? That might seem like it's the end of the world when they say it, but at the same time, it could save you lots of money and time.
So much time. So listen to Will Bryant tell his story about how he entered a pitch competition to get the first validation point. But after that, there were several more that I want you to take note of, and I want you to utilize after this podcast in your own side hustle or full-time hustle to absolutely get it and crush it and knock it out of the park. Check out the interview now. All right, we are sitting here today in the studio. I'm sitting with Jonathan Murner, and we have got Will Bryant, the co-founder of Quanalytics. Don't ask me to spell that right now, Will. But welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for being here today. How's it going?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. It's going well. Happy to be here and happy to share my story with you guys.
Well, you've got a very unique story, something that we haven't really touched on our show quite yet.
Super unique. I'm super excited about you sharing it too.
Yeah, and how you found it and what you do. So tell us really quickly about just the basics of Quanalytics, what it is.
So Quanalytics is a market data platform that services the financial services industry. So we're talking your commercial banks, your non-bank mortgage lenders, hedge funds, investment banks, etc.
Cool, man. And you weren't always in that field, right? Or were you? Because I know that you told me in the past that you were at a bank for some time. Was that like your big dream job to say, I want to make an impact on a large corporation?
I think, as any of us can attest to, life throws curveballs your way and sort of has you, it makes you wind up in places you never would have imagined. I started out actually in college as a poli-sci major, but my first internship was actually with a asset management group out of North Carolina. So from that, was fortunate enough to have another job at an asset management fund throughout my senior year of college, and then following that, began my actual career at a investment bank up in New York. So I did that for a little while before I was recruited to come down to Regions Bank here in Birmingham, Alabama, where I helped manage a portfolio of private equity investments. So it's been a little bit of a unique, I would say, career for me in the sense that I've had such broad exposure to asset classes.
And, talking to you before, Will, you had kind of mentioned to us, obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you met your co-founder at Regions. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I met Chris Aliota shortly after starting at Regions Bank. We both worked in the Treasury group. One thing Chris shared and I in common was our passion for entrepreneurship and sort of the ins and outs of new technologies. And that kind of led to an open dialogue over the next course of, 2 to 3 years before we made the plunge into entrepreneurship.
That's awesome, man. Well, I think your story, and you can touch on this here in just a second, but your story is so unique for a couple different reasons, and we'll get more into one of those in a second. But I think a lot of the people that we interview on this show have a very similar vein that runs through their story as you do, and that's that you see that there's a gap in the market. There's an area where somebody can create something. You see it. I think that's the most important part is you have to notice that it's there. And then for you and your co-founder to see how to fill that void and ultimately create Quantalytics, right?
You're absolutely nailing one of the most important and fundamental things of doing a startup and entrepreneurship. And namely, that's, making sure you really have a market need or a pain point that you're addressing. I think, unfortunately, right now, there's a lot of people who go out there and they'll essentially, what you can almost say is create a problem that they're also providing a solution for. And they'll sit there and build out this whole thing and not, get the kind of traction that they're expecting just because it's not necessarily a real problem, that everybody has. One of the interesting things that a lot of people could do if they are interested in entrepreneurship is it's simple, actually. It's just ask people questions around them if they're feeling the same pain points that they are. It's that easy.
You're so right. And Will, you had found a very unique problem, and I want you to describe a little bit about what that is and like kind of that aha moment that you had or that you and Chris had when you realized like not everyone can afford this, and this has been stagnant since the 80s, right? Like this is the most innovative thing in the world, and you guys were like, you know what? Let's trial this out. Let's see if we can't disrupt this thing and do it. So talk a little bit about the problem that you guys solve.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely happy to. And I'll start out by giving, I guess, the listeners just a real easy example that summarizes kind of the problem that we saw in our own eyes. Everybody's familiar with an ice cream shop, right? And then, Baskin Robbins, you have 32 flavors.
I'm pretty familiar with them. Yeah.
All 32.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't put me in front of cookies and cream, or else it'll be in a heartbeat. Anyway, so imagine you walk into an ice cream store, right? And all you want is one flavor. All you're looking for is chocolate or vanilla, okay? Well, what if the person behind the counter were to say to you, your only option is to buy every single flavor. There's no middle ground. How ridiculous is that?
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous because some of those flavors aren't really.
Who wants orange sorbet? That's the worst.
Under the age of 75.
That is the same thing that's going on in the market data industry. You're having these market data providers give you, for one fixed price, every bit of data under the sun, when in fact you only need just one tiny bit of it to do your job. And so you're paying these astronomical prices, up to $24,000 for one single license. That's one person to do very little. I mean, literally using 15 to 20% of the entire platform, leaving 80% unused. So we saw that and we said, there has got to be a better way, a better solution out there. And that's what we set out to do.
That's awesome, man.
Well, and Will, you and I talked a little while ago, and you mentioned to me that like you weren't necessarily gung-ho about just like taking this thing on full time, leaving your secure desk job of what you'd worked really hard to advance in at Regions, one of the South's largest banks. But your co-founder was. And so what was that like turning point? Like, how did you feel when that idea was presented to you? What stage of your career were you in? Kind of tell those that are listening how you felt at that point emotionally. Like, how was your stability? Like, what was your life like? Because that's one of the hardest things to overcome right there, is that leap of faith and that fear that comes with it.
To go back and to describe kind of what I was thinking, what I was feeling, that led me to my decision at that point, largely centers around sort of my personal motives, and sort of what intrinsically drives me. Okay. For me, it's, the ability to learn and new knowledge. And so how does that fit in the story? Well, for me, doing something like entrepreneurship allowed me to get exposure to all kinds of different areas, whether it's marketing, sales, product dev, business dev, you name it. So that really was something that interests me. I will say that it's different for everybody, right? Not everybody is completely and intrinsically motivated by, learning and knowledge. For some people, it might be, success doing sales, or, the paycheck, it can be whatever for anyone. But for me, it was knowledge. And that's what led me to do Quantalytics, as opposed to sort of continue down what you could almost call a hyper-focus career within sort of the corporate setting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And you're catering, and let me get this straight, because we've talked about this on other episodes, and those of you listening, you know this by now, but I got to remind you, your full-time job, that is now your avatar, correct? Those are the people, your previous full-time job, those are the people who are buying your product, similar to them?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So you knew, while you were at your full-time job, you knew exactly what makes those people tick. You know their pain points. You know what they're seeking. You know what kind of consultations they want. You know the price points they're willing and able to pay. You had set everything up without really even knowing it, right?
So it's double-sided, right? So you absolutely had the advantage of knowing the problem intimately, if you will, and understanding, the people who are affected by that same problem within sort of your previous organization and affiliations. But with anything new, it's still very much a learning experience. You have to learn how to put on a sales cap, right? And sort of walk the walk and talk the talk. You have to learn how to be simultaneously with the sales guy, the CEO of the company, the COO of the company, et cetera, which is a whole new experience that, as I alluded to earlier, involves a pretty steep learning curve.
Well, there's one part of your story that we definitely wanted to focus on that I, kind of briefly mentioned earlier, and that was how you got this business started, and that's in the form of Velocity. And so I want you to tell everyone a little bit about what Velocity is first, and then how you guys got involved, and just give us a little bit of that story if you can.
For those of you who don't know, the Velocity Accelerator Program, it is what is commonly referred to as an Incubator Program. And basically what these programs do is they'll take in a certain number of startups, some of which may be only in a specific industry, or some may be in any industry. Some may be a particular point in growth, while some may be, still in an idea stage. But what all these incubators do is they take these companies and they bring them in. They introduce them to mentors and coaches and lawyers and marketing specialists, and in some cases give these companies capital as well, a very important resource if you're going to do a startup. And what they do is they let them, kind of work through this program that's over the course of, in Velocity's case, 3 months, and hopefully catalyze the growth into 3 months what might be achieved in 1 year.
And Will, how have you seen that pay off for you guys? Because tell us a little bit about where you're at when you entered the program, what type of business Quantalytics was at the time, because I do think that some of you are listening to the show right now thinking, I'm way too early in the phase. I don't want to necessarily stick my neck out there and make this whole thing, this big idea that I'm pitching. What stage was Quantalytics when you guys pitched, and how has it led you to where you are today?
For us specifically, we had what you would call a prototype. We were still incredibly early, had a beta customer just kind of giving us feedback, but we were still incredibly broad in our focus. And what the Velocity program did for us, as it'll do for any entrepreneur, is help, if you will, put the blinders on and help you really hone in on sort of a unique market niche where you can get some traction. And that's exactly what we focused on throughout the Velocity program.
Well, let's be real quick. Like, was that a nerve-wracking situation to go through? I mean, I know how those pitch competitions can be sometimes. Sometimes they're really lax, but sometimes they can be pretty like hardcore on you.
Humbling, to say the least.
Yeah, humbling would be a much better way of saying it. How was your experience? And like I said, was that nerve-wracking for you guys, or were y'all just like easy breezy?
I vividly remember the night before the Velocity program started, sitting there with so much uncertainty in my head as to what tomorrow, what would go on the next day, what would go on over the next month, 3 months, and where we would be after that point. It almost felt like a little kid, who had just learned how to swim, about to jump off the diving board,
Best of luck, kid.
Exactly. That's how I felt. So yes, absolutely. I was incredibly nervous, but also excited about the opportunity. And sort of in going through it, yes, it's the whole spectrum of emotions. It's humbling, it's rewarding, it's encouraging. You name it. You will experience it during that program.
Hey, and Will, I've got a really interesting question for you, because this is something that every single entrepreneur has got to do, but really and truly, it is one of the hardest things to step back and do, which is to look at your business model. And I'm not talking about the website and what people see. I'm talking about the whole idea of it. To step back from it, like you said, take off the blinders and actually look at it. What are some pieces of advice that you could have for entrepreneurs to be able to do that? I know a pitch competition is one.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there would be a number of different mechanisms you could rely on to do exactly that. And as you just mentioned, a pitch competition is a great one. You're going to get some immediate feedback from the audience as to whether it's something that interests them or not. And you can tell by simply looking at the audience, their eyes are going to be glazed over or they're going to perk up in their seats. I think another really beneficial one is to, within your community, really do some homework. Figure out who the guys are who are serial entrepreneurs and see if you can get a coffee with them. They'll be the first ones to really sort of tear into your idea and your business model and make you really sort of defend what it is that you want to do. And through those conversations, and you got to do more than one. You have to do, a handful. But through those conversations, you'll either quickly realize that your idea is not a very good one, or you'll realize that, you're not so far off the mark. And, if you tweak it here, you tweak it there, then, you might have something that can fly.
And please take notes when you do that. Jonathan and I have done that several times in the past, and your brains will likely be blown if you're meeting with the right people on some really pivotal steps that you could take to actually get out there and crush it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, especially people Will and I have talked to, it's either one side of the spectrum or the other. So you're spot on. But the people who want to keep it more reserved and to themselves, and they're really scared to put their idea out there, they're the ones that don't really make it that far. And the people that we've talked to who are really just out there talking to whoever they can, and obviously you want to talk to the right people, key people who are going to mean something, and their feedback is going to mean something and having some authority. But those people who are out there getting as much feedback as they can, they're crushing it because they're getting that feedback and using it to pivot their business to where it needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are absolutely right. And earlier, I think one of you mentioned taking notes. I think one of the most important things in doing that as well is paying close attention to the questions that those people ask, because those are the same questions that you need to be asking yourself over and over and over again throughout the journey.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, let me say, gosh, paying attention to questions when you really want to defend yourself, or when you really are like, no, this is why. That is one of the most difficult. And it's just, I don't think that's just an entrepreneurial thing. That is a human thing. Like, you want to be right. You want what you love and what you're so passionate about to work. But sometimes ignorance is truly bliss. Like, that could be the worst thing in the world for your business. And you find yourself 12 months down the road, still kicking the can down the road, and you're in monster trouble because you did not listen to those questions.
Yeah, you're still trying to prove your point.
Exactly. Yeah, you guys are exactly right.
Well, cool, man. Well, where can our audience find you? Is there your website? Tell us a little bit about where they can find you, a little bit more information about Quantalytics.
So our website is quantalytics.com. The spelling is QUANTALYTIX.com.
Exactly how it sounds.
Exactly right, except for the ICS at the end, right?
Well,
Hey, Millennovator is not the easiest thing to spell in the world either.
2 L's, 2 N's.
That's what we like to say. Well, cool, man. And anybody who's out there listening, go get involved. There's 3 ways, just like you mentioned, Will. 1, get into a pitch competition, whether that is really small or on a large scale like you did, Will, with Velocity. 2, find some serial entrepreneurs around your town and just grab some coffee, talk to them, ask the questions, and do that 3 with multiple people. I love that advice, Will. Thank you for being on the show today, man. This was really awesome. And I know you're a busy dude, and you guys are over there killing it downtown in Birmingham right now. And I just appreciate you taking 15, 20 minutes out of your day to chat.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to, guys. Thanks for having me.
One time I got a show to do, and if you love hip hop, I'm about to perform for you.
So we'll have a question.
Shoot.
Do you think they gave away participation trophies for that pitch competition?
This is not T-ball. This is real business. Actually, I think that they ended up winning. This was the 2016 competition. About $50K of seed money that they were able to utilize very wisely, and it's no doubt helped them get to where they are today. But offline, Will has told us that the money was great, right? I mean, that really helps. And if you're in a startup that is investing in technology, you do need that. But you can find the money. Let's be honest.
For sure.
You can get the money. It's the mentorship. It's the analytical questions. It's the drive. It's the ambition. It's the
feedback.
This isn't going to work. Prove me wrong. Yeah, it's the feedback that is the greatest part of entering a pitch competition, because like Will said, it takes the blinders off your eyes and makes you realize, okay, not everybody sees this business like I do.
Yeah, and I think Will didn't really get into it as much in the interview, but when there's a lot of Wills going on right now, but when Will and I had talked to him previously, he pretty much told us that they saw something in their business in Quantalytics, so they kind of gave it to him. The pitch committee or whatever they're called, they kind of hounded on him a little bit and just grinded on him, gave him a lot of really tough questions because they saw something in him and they wanted to see what was inside and really make sure that they were the right people to bring that business to fruition.
Challenging them, right? And you can't take that lightly. You don't need to go and say, oh, well, that really hurt my feelings. I wouldn't. This is all very, very critical and very great feedback your business needs. Jonathan and I have sat down with several people, one in specific, who at the very beginning of Millennovator, we were so fired up, no doubt had blinders on, and said, we're going to do this, and this, and that, and this, and that. And he's like, whoa. Let's think about this for a second. Focus on one area and just go deep. And that was one of the best, most critical pieces of feedback I've ever gotten. Sitting over lunch, just chatting, being challenged about our business.
We quote that almost daily at the office.
You're right. In our day-to-day, we do. We quote that all the time.
Well, we have to focus on one thing.
Find one thing and go very, very deep in that.
So, guys, I want you to think about what your one thing is and go after it. And don't be afraid to get feedback from people.
And if you want to add one thing, you could always add writing a review of the show on iTunes.
What?
Right? Because
man, that was a segue. Right
I'm just saying, it's very possible. It's very easy. And we love to hear your reviews. Or even better yet, get personal with us. Shoot us an email at millennovator@gmail.com, 2 L's, 2 N's, and ask us your favorite questions. Ask us tell us, better yet, tell us who you want to have on this show, because I promise you, we will get them on this show. So for those of you out there listening who needed validation in your idea, now you know 3 ways to go and get it. I want you to go out there and challenge yourself to reach out to some serial entrepreneurs in your town, whether it makes you uncomfortable or not, and get them to just give you some feedback on your idea. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, one, and people like that love love business ideas.
Oh my God. And they love that you come to them asking for their feedback. I mean, they're honored by that.
And I get it all the time. I had coffee with somebody 2 weeks ago that wanted validation on an idea. He was a CPA. Great dude, great idea. I proved that to him that it was a great idea, and he's taking it on. That's what it's all about, guys. It's a circle of entrepreneurship, and it all begins with abundance. So get out there, challenge yourself, network with people, build relationships, and ask them what they think about your business, because I promise you it's not going to hurt.
TTFN. Ta-ta for now.
TTFN, ta-ta fo.
One time I gotta show the dude. And if you love hip-hop, I'm about to fuck with you.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to call your mother and tell that woman that you love her. And if you love the show almost as much, subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us a sweet review. We're definitely not ashamed to blush. Now, go forward and implement what you learned from today's episode into your business. We cannot wait to personally hear your story of success and replicate it 1,000 times over.
Give me the